gotta read the Demons.
Yeah.
It's right there. You gotta borrow it from.
No, I got a copy. Dude, you should see my stack of what I want. I'm trying to work. You probably have a very similar stack of what you're working through.
Hello there. Hey, what's so important? What you got here that's worth living for?
So I'm here with Luke Johnson, Dr. Johnson, and I guess your dad's doctor. Is your dad an MD?
DVM.
DVM. But
and I'm a PhD.
And Taylor Lewandowski here in Shepherdstown. We're actually parked just across the tracks from O'Hurley's General Store, where I first came many years ago to hang out, listen to some music. But anyway, just wanted to really quick kind of pick these guys' brains. Luke, among other things, runs Noetic app, sort of a platform. We'll describe Noetic for us.
Just an intelligent social media platforms, combination of audio lectures and scholarly journals that people can listen to and have conversations about.
Cool.
So I turn a lot of public domain scholarly journals, because those are the ones that are out of copyright that I have access to. So I draw a lot from the 1911 version of the Encyclopedia Britannica, which has a wealth of fantastic writing in it, actually.
Really?
And because I'm focused on the humanities, a lot of it doesn't really change. And in fact, a lot of things are preserved there that are not passed down to us 100 years later. And then I JSTOR through a fortuitous turn of events for me, released a bunch of their stuff from behind their paywall into the public domain.
Nice.
That was published before 1924 as a result of some bad press.
Interesting. We'll have to get into that.
Where does this go? I don't know how much I don't know how much I can say.
For right now, we just wanted to kind of, talk a little bit. So Taylor, I've known for a couple years now, and it came out early that he was interested in Shepherdstown. We were in Montana, and I just told him, I've been to Shepherdstown. I love Shepherdstown. So he drove out here a couple days ago, and he was just telling you a little bit, if you want to just briefly kind of give us the little once-over on what your connection is to Shepherdstown.
Yeah, I grew up in Indiana, and there was a used bookstore where my grandparents lived in Wabash, Indiana, and it was run by this man named Tom Kelch. And I would go there sporadically through high school and a little bit of college, and he would tell me these stories about Shepherdstown, and specifically Charlie Owens, who ran this drugstore downtown. And what fascinated me the most was this story about this very well-known painter in New York City in the 50s, who then decided to put all that on the back burner and move back to his hometown of Shepherdstown and take over his family's business, which was the drugstore downtown. And he stopped painting after that.
Stopped painting. So we've been kind of going around picking people's brain about Charlie Owens, and we're starting to put together this picture of what comes to mind for me, I don't know why, is this short story, this Willa Cather short story called A Sculptor's Funeral, about this guy. The body is coming back to small town in Kansas or something, and it's all this small town sort of farmers and this sort of idea that like he went to the big city and kind of was, because he was a sculptor who had been popular in New York or something, and his body's coming back. So that theme is kind of relevant for all of us, right? So you went off and studied in Oxford, you went off, got your PhD, you were down in Athens, Georgia, blah, 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 and then made a move to come back home, back to Middleburg, which is hardly like, country bumpkins, but it's not, the intellectual mecca.
There is no intellectual mecca anymore.
Well, yeah, but certainly not Middleburg.
Certainly not anywhere. The intellectual mecca is to come. It is. But that's a
that's
divergent
else.
conversation. There is no intellectual mecca.
Okay, but this idea of coming home back to your sort of rural roots, Charlie Owens did it, and I think that dynamic is what interests you.
Yeah.
And then you recently did it. You went back
I
to
recently
Indiana.
moved back to Indianapolis and back to Wabash and all of that. And, this idea of coming home, or, I am like very attached to it. Or just, writers that were and artists very good at something and then gave it up, Rimbaud, or became reclusive, Emily Dickinson, J.D. Salinger.
Sure.
It's just a very strange.
To me, what's sad though is that tension between art and home, the fracturing.
Yeah. Then you got You Can't Go Home Again by Thomas Wolfe.
Thomas Wolfe.
Which
I
is
don't know.
all about that. Really.
To me, I have a vision of art as sort of flowing out of the home, as the home sort of being an engine for artistic expression. Whether it be music, folk tales, whatever, just family art projects, whatever. But that clashes with this idea. Almost this more Odyssean idea of like art is dealing with, all these monsters out there while one tries to get back home.
I think the monsters are within. And to be honest, and Taylor may disagree with me, I think the best art comes from being reclusive. I think you actually have to get out of the intellectual epicenters in order to make anything original. You need cleaner air. You need to not be in echo chambers having people regurgitate what you already believe. This is my own personal belief.
Sure.
Now, I could.
Who would you cite as an example of that?
Myself, obviously. I don't.
But I mean, what artists we know that kind of got out and then their art got
It depends
better?
what you mean by artist, right?
Well,
I mean,
say-
whether it's like, Nietzsche in the Alps or whatever, and coming up with what he's doing, or Bon Iver going off into the woods of Wisconsin. If any of these stories are to be believed, they make for convenient backstories that make the art better, I suppose. I don't particularly care about. I'm just saying the experimentation I've done on my own soul, is that breaking away from civilization, and that means oftentimes that means coming back to your podunk hick town, is more important for creative genesis than being in some sort of intellectual mecca. Now you could cite all sorts of scenes, like what Andy Warhol and the Velvet Underground and all this like cross-pollination and incestuous relationships. I have feelings about these things. I don't think a lot of these things are organic. Okay, true organic art, I think, happens a lot with unknown people in areas that are untouched by the larger cosmopolitan outside world. The rest of it, in my opinion, is inorganic. But that's a larger thesis that I'm working on.
Back to this sort of...
Taylor may disagree. He may think the best art comes from intellectual hives.
Well, I just think there's two things. I mean, on the first level, it depends what kind of art. If you're a musician, you need other musicians to create music.
Right.
In a lot of ways.
There's a certain
But the thing
advantage.
is like there's always this overlap of like, and balance between the creative life that you nurture and the community that you are a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also where, like for me, I've rejected my home for so long. I have a great deal of animosity against my upbringings and the place where I grew up.
Sure.
And
Don't
now,
get me wrong. I don't love my place.
I know. I know.
It's
That's why we leave it to some degree and try to find space and to be able to have creativity. But the thing is like the part of it is returning home is, for me personally, is to try to have meaningful relationships with my family that I had before. And that is different than the creative part, because you also have to create this other space to be creative, and for writing you need, silence, solitude, all those different things. Even Proust that we've been talking about, he lived in the hotbed of Paris, but his entire room was made out of cork so that he wouldn't be able to hear anything.
Yeah,
that was his own way.
Room, really.
Yeah, that was his own way to create a solitude place where he could, be unencumbered.
So getting back to the Charlie Owens idea, and Charlie Owens himself, as far as we know, he was hobnobbing with the gal that represented him. What was her name?
Betty Parsons.
Betty Parsons also represented Jackson Pollock and Rothko. So obviously he's in the whole mix of things in New York. Comes back here to Shepherdstown, runs the family drugstore. His uncle is like this guy that used to buy warts. Anyway, interesting sort of scene. As far as we know, he gave up art. We don't know that, though, for sure. But close friends say he did.
Yeah,
So do you think he was becoming more himself, or do you think he felt a sense of alienation? I mean, it's obviously conjecture, but
I think it is probably alienation. I mean, he was very disturbed, frustrated, angry at what the art world was leaning towards.
So he just thought he'd come back and sell.
Because once he came back from Rome, which would have been 1949, 50 or something like that, the entire art world had changed. It was all... Jackson Pollock became,
sort of
the art world, And that changed, all of art.
Now, I don't know what his grievances were with the art world.
I think it was just different. Well, he considered... people said that he thought that they were just boring.
Well, some part of my backstory that you don't know, we haven't broached in conversation prior to this one, is I did music for many, many years.
Right.
And actually, that was what I was more known for.
That was when I last saw you in Athens, Georgia. You had sound. What was it called? Sound. Your studio.
Pop Heart Recordings. And
okay. Pop Heart. That's it. Yeah.
A variety of. The main project I had was called Emergent Heart, and then I did
Emergent Heart,
and then I did another one called Cry Face. And I'm very proud of those recordings, but there always seemed to be a limit to how far I could go with what I was doing, and I thought the limit had something to do with the way that I constructed things, put things together, how I was pushing it. And I realized that there was a toll to be paid to go further without elaborating on that. And I didn't think it was all that nefarious. I thought it was largely financial. Come to find out, it's more nefarious. Well, I actually have, and when I found out that there is something actually throttling the mass distribution of creativity, that's when I became very disgusted with a lot of the people that I had put up on a shelf and idolized. So I didn't have this experience with Pablo Picasso or Salvador Dali or Jackson Pollock or whoever else Charlie Owens was cavorting with or looking up to. I know he's not part of the Surrealist movement. I don't know very much about him.
It's still funny.
Whoever he was influenced by, Matisse. I don't know. I don't know anything about this person.
Right.
I haven't listened to music in 5 years.
Really?
And it used to define my being. Now, did I become a more authentic, pure form of myself, or is that alienation? And depending on how favorable you want to describe the last 5 years of my life, you could say, well, he lost his marbles. And in a real sense, I did. I did lose my marbles, if you think about that on another level. And you know what? So I guess that's all I'm trying to say here is that whether or not we judge an individual as being a more authentic form of themselves or because of experience of isolation and alienation, it's going to be ultimately up to the person who is going to be writing about them and making these sort of assessments.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a black and white affair. It's often going to be.
It isn't. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, authenticity and personhood, where do you, but I hope that as you unravel things with Charlie Owens, I hope we get to see some insight into that process, and we might, I don't know if he had, being near DC here and connected with that scene, it's come out actually fairly recently, and this is a whole different tack, but that the CIA actually did promote the abstract expressionist.
Promote.
They pretty much created.
It's good. This ties in all.
Well, because
It's not just
at the
promote,
time,
babe.
but at the time, the Soviet scene was like hyper realism, like really into realism, and so the idea was to undermine that and make them feel inferior or whatever. The CIA pretty much bankrolled the abstract expressionists, and this basically Charlie Owens was a casualty. He was essentially a casualty of war in that. Because he was a realist guy, and he suddenly found himself sort of awash in stuff that he thought was crap, and possibly, I happen to like Rothko and Jackson Pollock.
Yeah, me too.
But,
My nieces could do that shit.
well, that's the idea. But, I don't know. I've seen your niece's art. I'm just kidding. Nothing
But
against-
also, I think
Yeah.
the other thing is maybe we're valuing his art over. He had a tremendous effect on the individuals of this town for decades.
That's maybe it's a total sideshow, and the reality is just the little stories he told and his little antics that people loved, and the relationships he had, which are starting to unfold as you meet people who knew.
I mean,
him.
that's why it's like so important to me, because I know that Charlie Owens, influenced, cultivated Tom Kelch, and Tom Kelch was like the same figure for me that Charlie Owens was for him.
Yeah, so you're kind
And
of
and so
inheritor of that
and
human contact.
and I'm still trying to figure out what I'm gonna do with all this information, but I do feel like very connected. And Tom did the same thing. I mean, his bookstore was the Charlie Owens drugstore, just in Wabash, Indiana.
Really?
I mean, people would come there, tell stories, and make fun of people. We would, have like an impeccable literary taste. I mean, his bookstore was large and bought books regularly, and there's some books that I bought there that I've never been able to find anywhere.
Really? Well, hopefully somehow in the mysterious flow of things, you're able to carry that forward. I believe you will in your own way. And I guess, maybe that's the more important thing, like where each one of us connects with the people that we really care about. And those people usually aren't in some high-flying art scene, just the people.
mean,
I don't know. Do you feel...
You walk into a museum and look at Jackson Pollock, and then you leave and you don't think about it again. I mean, art is great. I mean, especially, art and literature and philosophy and all these different things, it makes living, I think, a little bit better. But I mean, there's nothing like, sitting down and talking to someone.
Sure.
or like having relationships that last, years, decades.
Sure.
That are meaningful friendships.
So, I mean, kind of looping back and, zooming out really hard. Luke, what to you is the value? I mean, you're reading Dante right now.
No, not. I'm reading Jung right now.
Okay, you're reading Jung.
Yeah.
You're going to get into Dante, but say you. But I'm thinking
I
more.
intend to do the Divine Comedy.
Okay, Divine Comedy. I'm thinking more of just fiction, and I treat Divine Comedy as fiction. It's just, but it's had like a huge effect on. I mean, it's a major sort of milestone in the flow of Western tradition. But what value does that have ultimately? These ideas sort of shape our view of reality, but I don't know. I guess.
My personal reasons for reading. I don't think there's any truth in Jung or any of these books really.
Any of the books.
So I don't look for these books. I'm interested in in cinema and literature to actually destroy our understanding of reality. Because I believe that there's disclosure in these major things that are pushed upon us within Western society. And the idea is to find these threads, weave them together, and show people the tapestry of lies that has been pulled over our eyes to seduce us into what I believe is a strong delusion. So that's my interest is to destroy. And my interest in destroying what we understand reality is so that we can actually see what base reality is, because you cannot really.
And that's
that's
a very Heideggerian theme, sort of breaking things open so that everything's constantly being covered up by this sort of meta-narrative that's a lie.
Yes. Whether it's with metaphysics, whether it's with apologetics, whether it's with literature, whether it's with cinema, whatever it is, all of these things work synchronistically in order to lull us into a state of false consciousness and perception. And I'm passionate about incinerating that whole damn thing so that we can see the world anew and see it as it actually is. And what I believe the world actually is, I believe the world is biblical. So what does it mean that the world is biblical? Well, I think it's I would say it's like a hyperdimensional matrix of some nature, involving many planes of reality and perception. But I think we have to get beyond. I think we have to find the essential truths within art that were disclosed to us in order to get us out of this maze, this labyrinth that we were born into. That's my current philosophical approach.
Sounds to me like you're almost like bull in a china shop.
I'm pissed. I'm pissed, man. I ate up a lot of lies.
Yeah.
And I intend to.
Have you thought about just pulling the Charlie Owens, like just bail on the whole thing, find a job, work at the local five and dime, and
there's an inclination still to
or
help.
farm, you guys.
Yeah,
you
man.
can farm and down.
But I mean, I can't.
Southern Loudon. And
I don't think I think I should still try to help people because I don't want to make this about me. Whatever. I didn't even know this is going to be a thing, but
nobody does.
Yeah, and probably not.
Blathe.
Probably should not go on the internet.
Blathe. It's just a bluff, man.
All right, but what my desire, I still have a desire to help people.
Yeah.
Because, very few people can actually see the deception. So I've got all my brothers and sisters like somnambulating in this mist, and I'll get them out of it. I was allowed to get out of it. Still am getting out of aspects of it, so I feel sort of an obligation to get other people out of it.
Well, it makes sense. Well,
I'm mixing a lot of metaphors here, mazes, whatever.
Misty maze.
It's interesting. Ariadne in the myth of the Minotaur, she not only does she have a magical thread that Theseus can use to get out of the maze, but in some tellings of the story, she does have the ability to see through mist.
Really?
Yeah. So the mist actually is part of the labyrinth story.
Huh. Interesting. Well, I appreciate you guys taking some time to talk to me about this. It's been really fun. I'm excited, both what you guys get into, but this guy, Charlie Owens, whose life we've been chasing down for the last 2 or 3 days here in Shepherdstown. I don't know, it's just reminded me, like you said, like the little stories and stuff, it just reminds me that all of our lives touch other people's lives. And in ways we can't imagine, what carries on. I don't know, the value of a human life as people fade into
the mist.
The mist.
The mist of time. Or
the mist of time and delusion and space.
I'd be curious to what animates my intellectual endeavors. They're not the same things that animate your intellectual endeavors, but I'd be very curious to know if Charlie brushed up against some of the things I brushed up against, and he said, "No more."
Yeah,
and
I think some of that stuff.
And he was just like he realized that he was rubbing up against something that was monolithic. In nature.
I know one guy that can answer this question probably better than anyone.
And we're all headed over now. You're going to try to see him in a minute here.
I'm trying to knock on his door at least 10 minutes away.
And maybe that's why he stopped painting.
And
Yeah.
Because
we
he
follow another recluse.
Yeah, what's his name? Tom Klein?
Jim Klein.
Jim Klein, another artist. Yeah, it's interesting. So Taylor did a little documentary years ago on this guy, Charlie Owens, and his friend, Tom Kelch. And Tom reads this letter that he had from Charlie Owens from when he's in Italy. And it's this whole expat community. And his senses just kind of, would you say, like, disgust at the whole...
Yeah, they didn't like any of the painters there.
Yeah.
The whole intelligentsia.
They
sort of-
like the screenwriters and directors.
I'd be very curious why he didn't like those players. I have great animus towards a lot of the musicians that I used to hold in high esteem. And
I mean, he walked into an art, like a well-known exhibit in New York. Tom told me the story. Went up to a sculpture in the middle of the room and just spit on it, and then walked out.
Really?
well, but and so the question really becomes so someone's like, oh well, Luke is upset at these individuals because they got something he never got, right? It's jealousy. No.
Because Tom, this guy,
It's not jealousy. It's
Charlie?
he could have been there, right? So it's not like he's spitting on him because he's jealous. It's got to be something else.
I would go up to these people in person and be like, there are certain individuals I would walk right up to, and I'd be like, I know all about your 30 pieces of silver.
Really?
I do. There are certain people that I could look dead in the eye, they have sold you out, and you don't even know it. And I look them dead in the eye and I tell them that. It's no envy.
Do you feel like there's eventual, obviously we're right in the middle of seeing a massive centralization and clamp down on YouTube, Facebook, whatever, but the technology's out there for a decentralization of artistic expression?
It always has been. It's nothing new. It's not. Don't expect to be able to feed yourself with it. We may just have to go around to doing. I don't know much about how the art world has changed as a result of the internet, but obviously, a lot. And I'll let you speak to that. I can say what it's done for. The publication of ideas and for music, and at least with music, you may not get to be like Pitchfork's like band of the week or whatever, but you can still have like a demo tape that is like deeply prized in certain communities that's passed around and dubbed. And it's not like you couldn't get microfiche and scholarly articles like before the internet was invented and geek out on that. It just takes some extra effort. Everyone can be their own Goodwill Hunting or like Ian Mackay or something like that now, So I don't know if we have to like go back in time to do it right or whatever. I'm a big fan of the internet. If I was going to say there's an intellectual mecca, it is that. But this raises a larger question about we're right in the middle of Silicon Valley clampdown, and you've got a lot of liberally minded people cheering this on. I think they're well intentioned, but I don't think they really understand why they're doing this. And I think a fundamental question, a big question, I don't have the answer to it, is who owns the internet? How free is the internet?
Yeah.
How free is speech? Are these speech? Where do governments step in and limit people what they can say and do? But I will have to say, this desire to be ruled, this desire to just to silence and rule over people is so bizarre to me.
It's strange.
It is so, and is so antithetical to the human spirit to squash out freedom of expression and all of this. I can't believe that the people that are cheering this on are the people who actually inculcated that value into me. It's completely paradoxical.
Well, hopefully we'll see maybe a little backlash. When you have that, there's a lot of even liberally minded folks who are like, whoa, you know.
Are there?
Subscribe. Hey, you. Hit the subscribe button.